Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in history when the world seems to hold its breath, when events unfold that leave us searching for meaning, guidance, and clarity. In times like these, we are reminded that life is not merely a series of random occurrences, but a carefully woven tapestry in which the hand of God is always present. Today we stand at the edge of such a moment, where faith collides with the reality of power, and where a warning echoes so loudly that it cannot be ignored. When God speaks, He does not whisper without purpose. His warnings are never meant to confuse but to awaken. They come to shake us out of complacency, to open our eyes to dangers we might have overlooked, and to prepare us for decisions that will shape not only our lives, but the destiny of nations. And in this moment, a name has risen to the center of that divine warning, a name that stirs emotions, divides opinions, and carries the weight of influence across the world. That name is Donald Trump. Now, whether you see him as a leader of strength or as a figure of controversy, what cannot be denied is the power of his presence on the global stage. But beyond politics, beyond headlines and human opinion, there lies a deeper question: what does God say? Because the voice of man may deceive, the noise of society may distract, but the voice of the Almighty cuts through all illusions. His warning is not about one man alone. It is about the condition of our hearts, the direction of our souls, and the choices we make as people of faith. This is not about fear, but about awareness. It is not about judgment, but about discernment. And if you are willing to open your heart and listen closely, you will discover that God's message is never meant to destroy. It is meant to protect, to guide, and to awaken us to truths that can save us. We are not here simply to discuss politics or personalities. We are here to uncover what heaven is trying to show us in this moment, and how we as individuals and as a community must respond. Because, my friends, when God sends a warning, it is not just for the powerful, it is for all of us. It is a call to look within, to strengthen our faith, to prepare ourselves for the trials ahead, and to walk with courage into the future He has already seen. God's warnings are given to awaken, not to condemn. When God speaks, He does not do so out of hatred or vengeance, but out of deep and unshakable love for His creation. A warning is a call to open the eyes of those who are asleep, to shake the spirit of those who have grown comfortable in dangerous places, to awaken hearts that have become numb to truth. Think of the way a parent warns a child who is walking too close to the edge of a cliff. The warning is not given to frighten the child into paralysis, but to alert them to danger, to help them turn and walk in safety. In the same way, God's warnings are not meant to chain us in fear, but to release us into freedom by guiding us away from destruction. Throughout history, we see this pattern again and again. God sent warnings to His people through prophets, through visions, through signs in the heavens and voices in the wilderness. Each time, the message was consistent: turn back, open your eyes, do not be deceived by the glitter of the world. The people often resisted, sometimes mocked, and even persecuted those who carried the message. But God still spoke. He still warned, because His desire was not to condemn, but to rescue. He does not delight in seeing His children stumble into the trap set before them. His joy is in seeing them awaken and step into the light of His truth. When God issues a warning, it pierces the noise of daily life and unsettles the comfortable. It shakes the illusion that all is well when danger is near. The world may tell us to ignore the signs, to carry on as if nothing has changed, but God's warning stirs a restlessness in the soul that cannot be silenced. That restlessness is His Spirit tugging at the heart, whispering that the path we are on may not be safe, that the road ahead may be more treacherous than we think. He does this because He loves us too much to leave us blind. He calls us to awareness so that we may see not only the external threats, but the hidden weaknesses within ourselves that could lead us astray. Condemnation leaves no room for hope, but warning carries within it the seed of redemption. If God wanted only to condemn, He would remain silent and allow destruction to fall without interruption. But when He speaks, when He warns, it is because there is still time to turn, still time to change, still time to walk away from the dangers that lie ahead. His warnings are signs of His patience and His mercy, reminders that His hand is stretched out not to strike us down, but to lift us up from the places where we are most vulnerable. Discernment is needed to separate truth from deception. In a world where voices are countless and messages pour into our minds from every direction, discernment becomes one of the greatest gifts a person of faith can possess. Not every voice that claims authority speaks from God, and not every word that appears righteous carries the light of truth. Deception often wears the mask of beauty. It cloaks itself in words that sound appealing, and it offers promises that seem too good to refuse. Without discernment, the soul can be easily swayed, led astray by half-truths or outright lies that are carefully designed to mimic the language of wisdom. Discernment is the spiritual lens that clears away the fog, allowing us to see what lies beneath the surface and to test whether something is born of God or of man. Discernment is not simply an intellectual exercise, it is a spiritual discipline rooted in humility and dependence on God. It requires listening not just with the ears, but with the heart that has been attuned to the voice of the Spirit. A discerning heart is not quick to accept every message that comes wrapped in authority, nor is it eager to reject everything that challenges comfort. Instead, it pauses, it seeks understanding, and it measures every word against the eternal standard of God's truth. The scriptures remind us to test every spirit because not every spirit is of God. This act of testing is not about skepticism for the sake of doubt, but about ensuring that the foundation of our faith is not shaken by deception. In moments of great influence, discernment becomes even more critical. Leaders rise, movements gain momentum, and ideas capture the attention of millions. But not all that shines in the eyes of the world is aligned with the purposes of heaven. Deception can ride on the back of charisma, it can hide in the shadow of power, and it can manipulate emotions to appear as truth. Without discernment, people can be swept up in the tide of popularity and persuaded by voices that appeal to fear, pride, or desire. But with discernment, the veil is lifted, and the true nature of words and actions becomes clear. Discernment is sharpened by prayer, by meditation on God's word, and by the willingness to remain still long enough to hear His direction. The more a heart remains aligned with the presence of God, the less room there is for deception to take root. The Spirit of God brings clarity, and with that clarity, a person begins to recognize patterns, motives, and intentions that others may overlook. What looks attractive on the surface can be seen for what it truly is when viewed through the eyes of discernment. This is why discernment is not optional, it is essential. It guards the soul, it protects the mind, and it allows us to walk with confidence in a world filled with counterfeit truths. Leadership without humility can become a snare to the soul. Power, influence, and authority are gifts that can be used to build, inspire, and guide, but when they are pursued or exercised without humility, they carry with them a hidden danger. Pride is subtle, often cloaked in confidence and determination, convincing leaders that their vision alone is enough, that their judgment is beyond question, and that their path requires no counsel from God or accountability to others. Humility, however, is the acknowledgement that every gift, every opportunity, and every position of authority is ultimately entrusted by God, and that leadership is not about self-exaltation, but about serving those entrusted to one's care. Without this perspective, leadership becomes a trap, a snare that entangles not only the leader but also those who follow. When humility is absent, decisions are made to glorify the individual rather than to serve the greater good. Words may be used to manipulate, actions to intimidate, and achievements to create an illusion of invincibility. The heart becomes hardened, and the ears grow deaf to correction or advice. What begins as a noble calling can quickly spiral into arrogance, where the leader begins to believe that their own wisdom surpasses the counsel of God. History is full of examples where brilliant and influential leaders fell because they ignored the need for humility, mistaking position for purpose and authority for righteousness. The absence of humility blinds the mind and hardens the heart, leaving no room for reflection, repentance, or divine guidance. True leadership, in contrast, is rooted in the understanding that greatness is measured not by how many follow, but by how faithfully one serves. Humility allows a leader to recognize weaknesses, to seek guidance, and to place the needs of others above personal ambition. It tempers decision-making with wisdom, patience, and compassion. It allows a leader to listen to voices that challenge, to accept accountability, and to recognize that their power is not self-generated, but given by a higher authority for a sacred purpose. Leaders who embrace humility are not diminished by their acknowledgement of dependence. Rather, they are strengthened, for they walk in alignment with God's design and the principles of justice, mercy, and truth. Without humility, leadership becomes an arena of pride, a battlefield where ego and desire drive actions rather than divine guidance. The more influence one has, the greater the responsibility to remain humble, because power magnifies both strength and weakness. A humble heart protects the soul from the corruption of unchecked authority, from the illusion that fame or control equals significance. It creates space for discernment, for empathy, and for the understanding that leadership is a sacred trust, not a personal throne. Humility is the compass that keeps leaders on a path aligned with righteousness, reminding them that every decision, every word, and every action carries consequences far beyond themselves. Leadership without humility is a trap that begins subtly, but its effects ripple outward, impacting nations, communities, and generations, and it is only through the cultivation of a humble heart that a leader can truly serve with wisdom, integrity, and purpose. A divided nation reflects the spiritual condition of its people. When a society is fractured, when communities argue over ideology, and when citizens turn against one another in anger, fear, or suspicion, it is often a mirror of the inner turmoil within the hearts of its people. Division does not arise in isolation. It grows from seeds of pride, resentment, and moral drift, spreading quietly until it infiltrates every layer of society. A nation cannot claim strength or stability when its people are spiritually fragmented, for the health of a country is inseparable from the character and faith of those who dwell within it. The external conflicts we witness are only a reflection of deeper spiritual struggles, a visible sign of unseen battles waged in the hearts of men and women. When people lose sight of shared values grounded in truth, justice, and righteousness, division flourishes. The absence of empathy and understanding, the refusal to seek common ground, and the tendency to prioritize personal gain over collective good all contribute to the widening chasm between citizens. These societal divisions are more than political disagreements, they are spiritual indicators. They reveal the erosion of principles that once held communities together and the neglect of the moral compass that directs the soul. When hearts drift from God's guidance, unity weakens and the bonds that sustain society are stretched thin. A divided nation is also a nation vulnerable to deception and manipulation. When fear and anger dominate discourse, when judgment replaces compassion, and when suspicion becomes the lens through which we view others, it becomes easy for misleading voices to gain influence. The fractures in society provide openings for division to deepen, for lies to spread, and for conflict to escalate. People become isolated in their own perspectives, convinced of their own righteousness, while blind to the needs, truths, and experiences of their neighbors. This spiritual blindness magnifies the visible rifts, creating cycles of mistrust, hostility, and unrest. However, the reflection of a divided nation offers an opportunity for spiritual awakening. Just as division exposes weakness, it also highlights where faith, understanding, and compassion are needed most. When citizens recognize that their collective discord mirrors a lack of spiritual grounding, there emerges a chance for renewal. Prayer, reflection, and a return to foundational principles of love, humility, and justice can begin to heal the fractures. Spiritual restoration in individuals ripples outward, influencing families, communities, and ultimately the larger society. The work of mending a nation begins in the hearts of its people, in the willingness to seek reconciliation, embrace humility, and pursue the unity that reflects God's intentions. Division, while painful and disruptive, serves as a spiritual diagnostic. It calls attention to the moral and ethical health of a society and challenges individuals to examine their own hearts. When people turn toward faith, cultivate understanding, and act with integrity, the seeds of unity can grow, transforming a fractured nation into one that embodies the principles of justice, mercy, and righteousness. In this way, the state of a nation is never separate from the spiritual vitality of its citizens, and the call to heal division is ultimately a call to awaken hearts and realign lives with the higher truths that sustain both soul and society. God's call is always to return to faith, prayer, and righteousness. In every age, in every season, and in every circumstance, God's invitation remains consistent: to turn our hearts toward Him, to seek His guidance, and to live in alignment with His divine will. Life often distracts us with the pursuit of power, wealth, recognition, or comfort, and in the midst of these distractions, we can drift from the spiritual center that sustains us. Yet no matter how far we may wander, no matter how lost or overwhelmed we feel, God's call does not waver. It reaches across time and circumstance, extending a hand to guide us back to the path of faith, to the place where our souls find strength, clarity, and purpose. Returning to faith requires humility. It asks us to acknowledge that we cannot navigate the challenges of life on our own, that our understanding is limited, and that true wisdom comes from aligning our hearts with God's truth. Faith is not merely a belief or an abstract concept, it is a living, breathing relationship with the Creator, a conscious decision to trust His guidance above our own impulses or the fleeting opinions of the world. Through faith, we find stability in chaos, courage in fear, and light in darkness. It anchors the soul, providing a foundation upon which righteousness and moral clarity can stand firm. Even when external circumstances threaten to shake us, prayer is the channel through which this faith is nourished and sustained. It is more than words spoken. It is the communion of the heart with God, a dialogue that opens our spirits to His presence, His wisdom, and His comfort. In prayer we lay down our burdens, confess our shortcomings, and seek guidance for decisions that affect not only ourselves but those around us. Prayer cultivates a sensitivity to God's voice, allowing us to discern the path He has set before us. It is through consistent, earnest prayer that we are reminded of our dependence on Him, and that we are strengthened to live according to His purposes, rather than the fleeting impulses of pride, fear, or self-interest. Righteousness is the natural fruit of returning to faith and prayer. It is the living out of God's principles in our actions, choices, and interactions with others. Righteousness is not about perfection, nor is it about earning favor. It is about aligning our lives with the character of God, allowing His love, justice, and mercy to flow through us. When individuals pursue righteousness, their decisions reflect integrity, their words carry truth, and their influence extends beyond themselves to impact families, communities, and nations. The call to righteousness is a call to action, a tangible expression of faith and prayer in the everyday moments of life. God's call is persistent, compassionate, and unwavering. It is a reminder that no matter the darkness that surrounds us, no matter the chaos in the world, the way back to faith, prayer, and righteousness is always open. It asks for our hearts to be receptive, our spirits to be attentive, and our lives to be realigned with the divine purposes that transcend time, circumstance, and human understanding.